An extraordinary claim by the Daily Mail this week insisted that farmers' markets were stocked by supermarket wholesalers, were not local, and moreover were duping customers. Was that really the case? Could it be that we're all so stupid we don't know what we're buying? Living Surrey went along to the monthly Camberley market and found the truth was actually a community of dedicated small and local producers working all hours, with a real commitment to quality food and a pride in their products. A place where customers could connect directly with the producers of the food on sale, as Jerry Strebokowski, Tillingbourne Trout, explains.
We've been doing farmers markets for about 4 years now. We find Camberley very much people want to eat things. They want to taste, eat, sample, which is great because you get to, to see what you're buying before you buy it. Try before you buy, classically. The trouble with farm gate sales, they call it, all these producers here have got farms and small holdings, and they tend to be tucked out of the way. And markets are a very, very important place for them to come and take their produce and sell it. And also it's a great form of advertising, is people will come here, buy something from you and think, for example on us, Tillingbourne Trout Farm, we didn't know you was there, and they'll come along and come back to your shop and buy. It's great, and it's a lifeline. A lot of these farmers here, it definitely is a lifeline. They've got no other outlets. You say online shops, they'll look at you as if you're mad. It's very, very important.
So we took Jerry up on his invite to see the whole Tillingbourne process at his 9-acre smallholding in Abinger, under the watchful eye of Ronnie the goat.
Fish farms, in my opinion, these days do far too much to their fish. We just leave them alone. They're in beautiful water here. The water comes out the ground, it's natural spring water. Absolutely no problem with that at all. It's tested every month by the Environment Agency to make sure that there's no chemicals, no nasties in it. We don't overpopulate these tanks like our predecessors. In a tank like this one here would have probably had 3,000 or 4,000 fish in it, where we won't do that. We'll keep literally 1,000 fish in this tank, and the bigger ones behind you, a couple of thousand, where they would put thousands in. And I think the more dense the population, the more overcrowded, the more susceptible they are to viruses, parasites, being run down, that sort of thing. Another thing we don't do is we don't grade. We don't keep netting our fish and making sure they're all different sizes. We do our best to keep the sizes separate, but then we leave them until they're ready to be used. So in other words, we're doing as little as possible. Another good thing is the food. If you notice this food here, it's quite pale in colour. It's not full of massive amounts of protein and all the chemicals they use. Fish farming's had a massive amount of bad publicity in the last few years, where they say the salmon have got all this colouring put into them, and that's true to an extent. They use a dye called astacantha, and it's a pigmentation, whereas the companies we use, these are organic feeds, there's no artificial colours in the food at all. The only downside to that is the fish grow a bit slower, but we're not too worried about that, as long as we get a good quality fish. A rainbow trout's natural flesh colour should be slightly off-white, slightly pink. Whereas if you look at some of the fish in the supermarkets these days, they're bright red. Now that's not natural, unless it's a wild salmon that's been living on a high shrimp diet. That's not natural. So we think, good water, put a small amount of fish in the tank, keep them looked after in that respect, keep the vermin out, we've got nets above us to stop the herons and a fence around to stop the otters, feed them regularly on a good balanced diet with no rubbish in it, and it grows a healthy fish. Okay, this is the smokers. So in this one at the moment we've got some fish cold smoking. You can see at the bottom of the smoke there, that's a shavings and some dust just smouldering away. It's not giving off too much temperature. As I say, it's called cold smoking, so we keep the temperature under 30 degrees. The idea of the product ends up like smoked salmon, where it's dry cured and sliced, and it's got the raw texture to it rather than the cooked flaky texture. I'll just show you one of the fish in the top there. That's a big trout, a big 10-pound trout. It's been dry cured, then air dried in the fridges, and then actually cold smoked. That'll be in here for anything up to 2 days, with the smoke just slowly trickling over it. And what that does, that preserves it, it enhances its flavour and gives it a nice natural colour. It will be taken into the other room and then prepared ready for slicing. Like I say, it's a nice natural wood, it's an ash wood, which is not too harsh. It's not like oak, which overpowers the fish. It just gives it a nice subtle flavour and enhances what already is a good flavour.
Obviously you saw the trout, the smoker earlier. This has come out, it's been put in the fridge overnight, and that allows it to set. Then all we have to do, we have to trim up all the bones and take the pin bones out so it's ready to slice. the sharp knife, which is take the bones like this. And as you can see, you've got all the, like that's what people generally consider what traditional smoked salmon looks like. So it's been bones over it when it's been smoked, which allows protects it, so it's as fresh as it can be. And we take and we pin bone it. Which is harder to do with trout than it is with salmon. They all come out pretty quickly.
But how many bones are in there?
So it goes from here down to here. So there's one, literally for every vein you see there, there's a bone up there. So we run our finger up. Get it all out. Okay, and that's them done. The last bit we do, we trim off all the fat along there and the fat along there. Okay, that's that ready to go. Then we vat pack it. Even if we're going to slice it and pack it sliced, we vat pack it as well, because that helps set the fish so it's easier to slice and you get a nicer product.
Everything is done on site, including the packaging and labelling, ready for the market.
One thing I would like to add about these products against some of the supermarkets these days is this is naturally smoked. There's absolutely no chemicals in it at all. All that fish has seen is water, salt and smoke. That is it. That's the only additives at all, and they're natural additives. So it's an age-old tradition of enhancing and smoking to preserve a fish. I don't see the sense in putting artificial colours in, which they do, to make it something which it isn't. You know, the flavour of that is phenomenal, and I do urge anybody to try smoked trout.
Local meat from Shear and Gomshall is also prepared on site by local farmer and butcher Graham Eusden.
I'm a local farmer. Butchery is something that has come secondary to the farming. We farm a few pigs, a few sheep, some cattle and some chickens, and from that we like to produce meat either for private customers or for sale at the farmers markets. Just cutting up a little bit of beef at the moment, which we'll mince in a second and turn into some beef burgers. It's very nice that we can use produce that we have produced, and that we also end up with a finished article where we know exactly what has gone into it, what we've used, any seasonings that we need to put in we add, but we know exactly what it is that's gone into it rather than having something else.
And where would this cow have lived its life?
We farm locally in Shear, so we've got some land in Shear. We've also got a little bit at Dunsfold, some at Esher now as well, so they would have all been locally grazed. We only tend to feed grass as well to all of our animals in the hopes that they'll fatten nicely on grass, so we don't know what additives go into the feeds that you're giving them these days. So if they're grass fed, we always feel that there's slightly better flavour to them. It does mean that we have to keep them a little bit longer than some people, but I think that only adds to the flavour, puts on a little bit more fat and produces a much nicer, tastier meat than perhaps if they're forced to grow very, very quickly. These are the burgers that we've produced. We don't put very little seasoning into them, and it's all meat and it's all from the chuck, which is the little bit on the neck. So it's a good quality meat rather than the bits and pieces that are left over at the end. Well, I just feel that it wasn't so much that people ended up being tricked into eating horse meat. It was the fact that on the labels it said that it was beef or lamb or something similar, which brings in my argument would be is that if that's what's on the label, do we then have to disbelieve everything that is on the labels, because we can't possibly say that any of it was true if it was particularly horse. It's up to people whether they wish to eat horse or not, but I just feel that if the label says that something's in it, that's what should be in it, and I was surprised that there wasn't more outcry about the labelling system than there was the fact that we were actually eating horse.
And as both a farmer and a butcher, are you finding you're having to build up public confidence again?
I don't think we particularly need to as individuals. I would say that the majority of my customers I know, hopefully they will trust what we produce. They'll have tried what we produced before and will have confidence in what we produce. So I don't feel that as a butcher and as a smaller retail that I would need to, but I do think farming as a whole has to win back the confidence, or had to win back the confidence of public, that what they were saying was in their meat was actually what was in it.
The trust that Graham has built up with his customers is reflected in buyers at the market. So what is the big attraction at farmers' markets for you?
It's really the quality of food. Myself, I get very worried really, the sort of food you get from the supermarkets, how it's manufactured. And you get a lot of vegetable oils and things like this. You don't really know whether they've been genetically altered and things. It's very difficult to see within food whether they've been made a proper way. So I think when you come to somewhere like this, you, in my case anyway, I'm more assured in the way that the food's been produced. And also I think it's nice to cut out the middleman, because obviously supermarkets make quite a lot, and it's good to see the money really go back to people that produce it. So.
White Lodge Farm is a 12-acre smallholding in Chobham, which the Vondel family have run since 1954. So White Lodge Farm, tell me about your products.
We make dry cured bacon. We smoke over real oak logs, and we don't use any sodium nitrate or nitrate. We've won a number of awards with it. And to me, I think it's a good product.
Being at a farmer's market, what does it offer you?
Well, chance to meet the public, what they want, so you can cater for it. And also, we've got our own farm shop at Chobham, and you meet people at markets and they say, well, I might as well pop into you, and this is where it goes.
And it's very much a family business, I see. This is your granddaughter?
Yes, I'm his granddaughter. I started doing farmers markets a few years ago with my grandfather and my father. And yeah, I help out at the farm shop as well.
And do you enjoy the farmers markets, meeting everybody?
I think it's amazing because you get to meet the public, you get to meet other stallholders, see how they're different to you. Plus, I've had an extraordinary childhood. Let's be honest, I've grown up on a farm. It's produced at the farm. We don't use any unnatural ingredients. My grandfather mixes up all the herbs and spices himself. So he does the seasonings. So like with our sausages and burgers, we have no preservatives, which improves it further.
Chris and Rosie Robinson's Chalk Hills Bakery is based in South Nutfield. So how long have you been doing farmers markets?
I've been doing them for about 3 years now, in fact, and the business is only about 3.5 years old. So once we'd established the business, one of the areas we got into was farmers markets.
And how successful do you find them for you?
I think they're tremendous. They're very good indeed. They're very good for a number of reasons. One is it's a good point for sales for us, but also it gets our name and our brand out into the marketplace as such and out into towns, and it's a general awareness thing, and it's also great fun. I enjoy it very much.
Do you have your regulars?
I certainly do. I have had people this morning who've come in and they've either ordered yesterday 5 or 6 loaves of bread, and I've had one lady who came in and she said, have 4 of these and 4 of those please, and they come, because I'm here once a month, they'll take maybe 5 or 6 or even 8 loaves home, which is tremendous.
Pauline Hedges and Andy Wilmot are part of the team that runs the Camberley Market.
Well, the Camberley Farmers Market's been going for nearly 3 years now. It's something we've planned for a long time. We're delighted to be here. It's a wonderful town centre, a very, very busy town centre. If you look at the number of retail outlets in Camberley town centre, it bucks the national trend. There's a very, very high occupancy rate here. So a really thriving, busy town. And we're delighted to be here. And we're delighted to be able to bring a number of small, local, independent producers from Surrey to this marketplace. I think there was a certain idea going back a few years that farmers markets were very much for a certain type of clientele, and that is absolutely not the case. As Pauline says, we have people from all ages, all social groups. It's it is exactly what it should be. It's a marketplace, it's a meeting place, and that's what it should be. Yeah.
And from a trader's perspective, they're selling direct to the public. What other advantages are there?
It's fresh. It's absolutely fresh. And the traders, particularly, for example, we haven't got them here today, but our goat's cheese, the lady makes, she grows it, she feeds the goats. She looks after them, she milks them, she makes the cheese, she then sells it. So she will know what's best in the way of recipes, what's best, how long the cheese will last, whether you can freeze it or not. You get the guy who does the fish, the trout farm, his mother makes the food once he's grown the trout. And then we'll be able to say, well, it's really nice if you do so-and-so, and this is the recipe I use. So you've got that entire continuity, which is wonderful. You don't get that in a supermarket.
You hear the phrase field to fork quite a lot these days. Well, you're seeing it in action as you walk around here. It's absolutely what you get.
For the full feature, watch Sky 192 on Friday the 27th of June at 7 p.m, which will also include the story of Croydon's hidden gem, the Surrey Street Market.